Hi, good evening, everyone. My name's Tom Hickey. I'm the school superintendent at South Shore Tech. I'm joined by Abington School Committee Representative Tom Petrozelli, along with members of our project team, Carl Franceschi from Drummy Rosane and Anderson, and Jen Carlson from our project management firm Left Field. It's my pleasure tonight to be able to run you through some slides regarding our MSBA school building project. If at any point you're interested in more information, we try to keep our project website, southshoretechproject.com, updated with latest meeting minutes and other artifacts, video recordings of our school building committee meetings and the like. Thanks for your interest. I'll start with just a little bit of background information. As the second oldest regional vocational school in Massachusetts, we opened in 1962, expanded our district in the early 80s when Whitman and Hanson joined, and in July, Marshfield will be our 9th member community. We're a school that has grown in popularity over the years, and we're currently able to host about 670 students a year. Our 9th grade class, which is when we do most of our admissions, is a size of about 175 to 180 students. And in the last 3 years, we've averaged about 68 students on the waiting list. This would be children from grade 8 who on the first day of school of grade 9 were still interested in attending, but we didn't have enough capacity. We offer diverse programming. Many programs that are in our school today have been here since its inception. We added a lot of programs in the 1980s, and we're hoping that with a renovated school or a new school, we will be able to expand into 2 program areas that we think have a strong labor market demand, and that would be plumbing and veterinary science. The other programs you can see on the screen are ones that are currently in operation. And as you probably know, we're an application school. Students from grade 8 will apply. We apportion seats to each town based on the 8th grade enrollment, and communities that don't use all of their seats, those open seats are reapportioned to communities like Abington, where there might be more demand than there is supply for seats. If you're familiar with our school, you know that this is something that this MSBA process is something we've been pursuing for a while. We did a facilities assessment in 2018, and it helped to validate the items that we're concerned about. We are a well-maintained school. We have always had the support of our communities. We have not wanted to see our school go into disrepair. And so we are proud of the fact that we don't have horror stories to have to share. But we do acknowledge that many of the systems of the building are reaching the end of their useful life. We also acknowledge that there's limited space. We have done everything possible to make room where we could. A lot of strategic, small construction projects, thankfully many with the help of our vocational programs. But with a new project, whether it's a brand new school or it's an ad reno as they call it, we would be able to address a lot of these issues. We've got a modular classroom that was supposed to be temporary when we put it in the year 2000, and it is still there. Most schools that have enrollment issues go to modulars, and one hopes that one day you can incorporate that into the building. We have science labs in classrooms that were never supposed to be science labs. And most importantly, we have undersized vocational technical areas. We know the kids we have in the building right now deserve more space, and we also know that with more space, we could enroll more students. So the MSBA process is certainly a lengthy one. We're proud of the pace that we have been able to work at up to this point. We started in the core program in March of 2022 when we formed our project team, and we've been focusing on studying designs and various enrollment levels. The MSBA has acknowledged that we have enough demand for our school that we should study enrollments that are anywhere from 645 students up to 975. And I'll show you those enrollments in just a moment. We're in the midst of several homework assignments right now through the winter. Back in December, we looked at some potential site layouts that if we were to build brand new, for those folks familiar with our school campus, the new building would be built on our ball fields in the back. Parking would be in the middle where the current building is, and our new athletic fields would be in the front of the school. You'll see some slides in a moment on that. We also decided that in moving the project forward, we would go with the construction manager at risk model, which allows us to bring on a construction firm earlier in the process to assist with the design in the hopes that that would keep a project on time and with fewer change orders. In January, we took an initial look at project cost estimates, and we also just had, today is January 25th, and we had a meeting just earlier tonight looking at some additional details, and there'll be a slide on that in a moment. And we have consciously made a decision not to make a final selection of a design or an enrollment until the end of February 2024. What we really would like to do with our communities, through the opportunity to communicate online, in person, is we want to use the month of February as an opportunity to reach out to our communities and ask them specifically to give us feedback. School building construction is very expensive. We've got to be very smart with our decision making, and we've got to listen to the people who are going to pay the bill. And that's what the month of February is for. We hope that these slides will help articulate what we're looking for. What do we know about project costs? Well, we've learned a lot. We know it's expensive. We know that the MSBA does reimburse, and there's no way we could tackle a project like this without some subsidy. But I'm sorry to say, vocational schools are not reimbursed at a special rate. Everyone knows we're a little more expensive to operate and certainly more expensive to build, but the reimbursement caps are the same. So we have to live with that reality until something changes. Hopefully it will change in the future. We know that 476 Webster Street is a small physical site surrounded by wetlands, so there are environmental limitations, and I appreciate the work that our project team has done to work within those limitations, to consult regularly with Hanover Conservation, so that the ideas we are developing are ones that are viable in the neighborhood that we're in. We know that ad reno options are, we're learning now that they are less expensive, but they have more limitations in terms of what our educational program would look like, but it's still worthy of review. The way that towns pay for this is something that we're taking a closer look at right now. We currently have a regional agreement that says that when we borrow money, we apportion debt by looking back 3 years and fixing the debt for the life of the bond, if you will. And that's been true since the school opened and the regional agreement was written. But we've had interest expressed to us to look at a model where, with such a large project that is of great expense, with the potential for fluctuating enrollments over 30 years, that we should consider an adjustable model. Tom Petrozelli, Abington's representative to our school committee, is a member of our regional planning subcommittee, and we're looking at a model that might be what I would call a 4-year rolling average for debt. There'll be more to be said on that. Whether this project goes forward or not, it's an idea worth studying, and we're doing our due diligence on that at this point. And the last bullet is that with Marshfield joining, and with the first group of 9th graders coming in the building in the fall of 2024, Marshfield will take on some of the costs of this project. And the way they will do so is we will look at their annual enrollments. And with each passing year, as they build grade 9, 10, 11, and 12 enrollments, their debt share obligation will increase. And the savings, that is Marshfield's contribution to the debt costs, will be passed along to towns to offset the costs of their projects, of their assessments, rather. Here's another summary of the timeline where we are. By the end of February, we will need to say to the MSBA, we would like to move forward with this kind of design and this enrollment number. This will lead to an extended schematic design period from March onward for the process, and that we would likely be we'll be in front of the MSBA in the spring, and then later for a final approval, probably in October. This would all culminate. This would all culminate, honestly, in talking to town clerks, 1 year from today, that on Saturday, January 25th, 2025, we would have a district-wide ballot where voters in all 9 communities would be asked to weigh in on the matter, whether or not they would support the project. We've got a lot of work to do over the next calendar year, and the major focus right now is to get the word out and seek feedback. If we're successful with that ballot question, we would move into a design phase of about a year, 2 years of construction, and if we stay on track, we would be able to open whatever this project looks like in September of 2028, possibly in January, And at the very end of the process, the fields construction, if this is a new construction, the fields would happen at the end of the process. This is a busy slide here, but if you look in the gray areas, look from left to right on the top, those are the 5 enrollments that we were allowed to study. That was the range that we were allowed to study, and we took a look. Given the fact that Marshfield has joined the district, it gave us a wider range to look at. As of now, the building committee has prioritized 2 enrollment numbers, 805 and 900. But as we talked about at a meeting earlier this evening, we are going to show residents comparable cost numbers for the 4 enrollments ranging from 645 up to 900. And again, from an earlier slide, our current enrollment is 670. And down the left column, you'll see that there were multiple designs that we looked at, and over the course of the time that the building committees worked on this project, we've narrowed it down to 1 addition renovation and 2 new construction. AR1 is the ad reno, and then the 2 new constructions are labeled 2.0 and 2.1. And then you can see the comparable square footage of these projects. I'll tell you that right now our school is a cumulative 130,000 square feet, single level building. If you're familiar with our school, this is kind of a busy slide, but Webster Street's at the top of this slide. What's in the middle is the current footprint of the school, and were we to build new, it would be in the back, in that blue oval. The green areas surrounding the campus are part of our property, but anything in green that you see are wetlands, and those are some of the limitations I spoke about earlier. I'll show you a couple of examples of new construction here. So picture you're in the drone and you're over Webster Street and you're looking to the back of our property. That building, which we're calling version 2.0, is essentially built on the baseball, football fields. The parking area in the middle is approximately where the building is now, and you can see the layout of a potential multi-purpose field with a track and then a baseball and softball field on the right. Here's another version of our site here. Again, now I'm going to orient you to say Webster Street's at the top of the page. It's another version of the building in the middle here, and then you can see another site layout, multi-purpose field, synthetic with a track, baseball, softball, and parking. Buses would likely be housed in the back of the building here. So this was so whatever design, whether we went with this 2.0 model or the 2.1, if we chose one of those, this is how the front of the property, if you will, would look. And here's the similar version looking, if you were standing on Webster Street, looking at ground level, what the building could look like. These slides are difficult to look at, but if you just follow the color code a little bit, this is an example of version 2.0. The first floor of our school would be mostly vocational programs in pink. The other colors you see to the left of the slide would be, in purple, a multi-purpose auditorium. This is a great use of space for us because while it's not as big as a traditional school auditorium, we're not a traditional school. And we also have multiple uses for this space, so we actually are planning a design where it has retractable seats. And so the seats can be collapsed so that we could use this for community meetings, Credit for Life fairs, Skills USA competitions. We'll get a lot of use out of that space. We will not have a standalone cafeteria, but instead you'll see there's an area to the left of the multipurpose auditorium, which would be an open dining commons area here, kitchen area here, and this would be the first floor of our, if you will, this would be a locker room area, and our gymnasium will be on the second floor. So in order to conserve space in this limited footprint, we would stack the gym, and it would be on the second floor. So here's a version of the second floor. You start seeing some blue. Those are, the brighter blue are science labs. Classrooms are in a duller blue color. And then the pink, again, are some of our shops that don't require high bay ceilings. And then you see the gymnasium on the left side of the screen. The area in white here does not have anything on the second floor because this is where you have those high bay shops on the first floor. And this little bump out here is part of it would be a greenhouse with our horticulture landscape program here. And then on the third floor, I guess we can call it a partial third floor. This is where you have some classrooms and one vocational program. This is our electrical program, which would allow us the luxury of having a high bay shop on the top floor. We went with this design because it was going to allow for a slightly smaller footprint, which would provide us some relief with parking, which will be a consistent challenge in whatever enrollment design we bring forward. That was version 2.0. I'll go at a slightly quicker pace here. 2.1 is a first cousin to the 2.0. The main difference is the dining commons, the gymnasium, and the multipurpose auditorium is in the center, not on this side of the building. The rationale for the setup would be the same. Most of the education on the first floor, high bay shops, public service shops. I will point out in this slide, I will point out in this slide that, and it's also true in 2.0, that we have a single entrance in these new designs, and our restaurant and salon and main office would all be in the same area. So folks coming in to go to the restaurant or to go to the salon or to dismiss their child from school would all be in the same area, which I think is an important safety and security measure that we've factored into the design. The second floor of this same version, again, similarly, you see the stackable gym. There's the multipurpose auditorium, again, looking down from the second floor. And then you see a mix of a few low bay shops, classrooms, and science labs. And the third floor of this design has a little more hallway space with one shop and some classrooms on the third floor. And the ad reno, the third design option we're looking at. This is probably a more familiar look for those that have driven by our school on Webster Street. So what you're looking at here in this orange dashed area, part of it here is the current footprint of the building. And so in this addition renovation, the portion that would be torn down would be part of the 1962 building. The renovation part would be what you see in gray here. And then what you'd see next is an L-shaped addition, hence the name, where we would be building and I will say to you, I made a note here in the corner, for enrollments that are 805 or 900, this model would have to stack a third floor on, and this would be mostly classroom space. So what happens? The parking in the front would improve. We would end up putting more parking in the front. You'll notice these are pictures of our fields in the back. They would remain. They would be updated accordingly, but the bones of a portion of the school would stay the same. Here's another version with a little more detail. These, by the way, all of these slides, this presentation will be on SouthShoreTechProject.com, and these slides are already available there now in various other presentations that we've done. But from a bird's eye view, here is the L-shaped addition. So if you're familiar with our school and you look slowly at some of the names of our shops, you might say, hey, the HVAC shop's not over there. And that would be part of this process. We would reallocate shop space as part of the renovation in order to scale the space to the demands of the program and the student traffic into the program. So here's a whole wing, for instance, where HVAC is near plumbing. We would have plumbing next to HVAC in all of our models. So that's part of the consideration for an ad reno. This model, we will evaluate all of these designs based on a matrix, looking at cost and looking at to what extent does the design deliver on the educational plan. And, but you can see here that there would be some new construction in here as well. Our graphic design visual communications program would be relocated here. That's currently in a shop that has a high ceiling. It doesn't need a high ceiling with today's technology, so we would make a targeted decision. And again, it's small print for the purposes of this presentation, but there are some other bump outs here that we would look at. So that's the L-shaped ad reno. This is just another conceptual sketch of what first floor. You can see a second floor has a couple of our shops. Allied Health and Computer Infotech do not need high ceilings. It's the same concept of how we would stack our education on the second, and then we would have a third floor with additional classes. So the evaluation matrix I mentioned a moment ago, we have to take a close look. We have to evaluate each design option. And this won't be easy to read at this point, but I'll just say that the concept here is we want to look at each design through the lens of, does it meet our educational plan? Let's look at the cost in terms of value. So when you look at, if you look just at a distance, I'll just summarize saying green means good. And so we would say that there's probably a lot of benefit to a new construction. And when we look at the areas of the ad reno that are not green, it doesn't mean it's an automatic no. We should still look and see, okay, there are some limitations to upgrading something that was built in 1962. But it may not just be the physical upgrade, it may be the way some of the curriculum is taught, it may be our capacity to expand. We're looking, for instance, at a cafeteria in an ad reno. We would not have the ability to expand the cafeteria much more than we have right now, which is already undersized. But the school building committee, as well as folks looking to give feedback on these designs, I would encourage us to look at these criteria as we're making some judgments on the design. And the matrix continues on another slide, and again, I won't read through it, but we've done a pass-through of trying to evaluate each design based on some of these criteria, which will help focus our conversation and an ultimate evaluation at the end of February before we make a decision. Okay, let me, excuse me, I'll just get to the next page here. Okay, so now here's the Jerry Maguire show me the money slide. Where do all these designs fit into the conversation? So this slide was just presented at a building committee meeting earlier today. There's a lot of information here, and we do have more detailed information forthcoming. So when you look across the top from left to right, if you look in pairs, you'll see, okay, I want to know how much this could cost with that ad reno you mentioned. So here are the two priority enrollments, 805 and 900. And if you work your way down these two companion columns just for a moment, you can see, for instance, okay, 202 million construction, 213 million construction. So it's $11 million more for construction to build the larger number. When we break these numbers down by town, by average household, we think this will help create a value-based conversation in terms of choosing one design or one enrollment. One's a little higher, one's a little lower, and where we as a community place our value. When you add in soft costs, which we would estimate across the board at 25%, that's the standard at this stage of the game, these construction numbers go to something between 264 for 805 to 280. I want to make it clear, and this isn't terribly important right now, but these numbers here, what we've done is we've had two estimators look at these plans so far. And one estimate, and the estimators are within like 3% of one another. But we've chosen to unpack the higher of the two estimates. So maybe, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but maybe this is 260 to 264. But we're breaking down the higher of the two numbers. And so now, based on unofficial but educated guesses of what the MSBA will deem eligible for reimbursement, we can see that the reimbursement rate for this project is in the 42% range. And now here at the bottom, what would be left at the local level? Somewhere between 153 to 161. Now again, this is one design, the ad reno, looking at only two enrollments. And you can take the same approach down the middle two columns and my eyes tend to go back and forth between, okay, this is a little more expensive. Okay, let's see, so this is a brand new school for 805, and that's $6 million cheaper than the ad reno. Oh, but wait a minute, this ad reno is for 900. And this is exactly the kind of chart that we want to have stimulate discussion to ask more questions. This is the option 2.0, which is the one where the gymnasium and the cafeteria, the dining commons are on the far side of the building. And then these two columns are that 2.1 version where those common areas are in the middle. So if your eyes go to the bottom line, these are the numbers that we're looking at. Now again, this is in the aggregate. This is not yet broken out by town, but that's where we intend to get. Take these numbers, make some reasonable estimates. You've got to factor in interest to pay for this. You've got to make a decision. Are you going to break this out based on level debt service or level principal? And with those numbers, when we unpack all these numbers, we'll be able to have a full picture of the cost impact. And ultimately here, this slide I think is important to point out. So if you're able to find these slides on our project website or go back and look at the slides in this presentation, what you might want to do is take the numbers from the previous slide and look here. Based on our current regional agreement, this is the breakdown of the share of the project. And this has followed if you will, a 3-year look back of enrollment. Now, Marshfield says TBD because, as I mentioned earlier, Marshfield's share will grow over time. And so ultimately what I can say with, I think, a high degree of confidence is that, number one, these debt shares will slowly reduce, if for no other reason than over the next 4 years, Marshfield's share will increase. And my projection would go something like this. If Marshfield sent us 20 students a year, by the way, Marshfield will be the biggest community in our district. They have the largest 8th grade population. But if they sent us 20 students a year after 4 years, assuming no attrition, that's about 11.9%. So again, if this remained fixed, these numbers would eventually drop. But I make this note here because this is something that I would be coming back to select boards and to finance committees to talk about, that we're looking at a regional agreement amendment that says 30 years is a long time. The original writers of this regional agreement probably didn't have an extremely expensive option. When South Shore was first opened, there was a very significant state subsidy for a lot of regional vocational schools in the 60s and 70s. Those subsidies don't exist today. There's far more of an obligation at the local level. So we're looking at a debt share model where we might say, as enrollment adjusts, debt shares would adjust. We're not interested in going from fixed to something that adjusts annually, but we're studying something that might be a 4-year rolling average. So there's more to be said on this, but this would be something that we would ask our communities to weigh in on probably in the fall of 2024. But we'll be shopping this idea around over the next few months. And with that, that's the end of the presentation. Again, SouthShoreTechProject.com is our project website. And my intention is to have our team break down these numbers, because of all the slides and all the pretty pictures. This is where I tend to want to rest here. We don't have to sell the value of our school. People know what we do. It is well regarded. And we've got to figure out the most affordable, modern step forward for our school for the next 50 years. And in order to do that, we've got to make sure that folks that are going to be paying the bills understand exactly what their impact is. And while these numbers are big and we can break them down, until we can tell somebody that this option at this enrollment will cost the average taxpayer this much, this is only a partial answer to that. So the month of February is when we hope to get this information out and seek further feedback. So I'd use the opportunity now, if there might be any questions I might be able to answer for anyone in the audience. And if not, yes.
I do have a couple. Robert J. Kelly, Jr., 167 Colonial Road. My first question is, why are we having a vote throughout the district rather than bringing this to annual town meetings?
Yeah, there are two options for regional vocational schools. The The option of bringing it to each individual town meeting would require a unanimous vote. We would need all 9 communities to say yes. A district-wide ballot offers, it's similar to the budget process, except that instead of it being town-specific, it's a vote in the aggregate. So a district-wide ballot does offer the opportunity for greater participation, but it also means that if we did it town by town, if we failed with one town, then the project would stop. Most other vocational projects that are in the pipeline or have recently gone forward have used this provision.
Okay, and who would pay for the cost of the district-wide election?
The district-wide
Each town?
election is the responsibility of the school district. We have it, which is essentially, well, who pays that budget? So what I have for the fiscal '25 budget set aside is a revenue source. We'll take $125,000 out of our excess and deficiency fund. So, in other words, it's not being added to the assessments for fiscal '25. We'll use that as a one-time expense. We had a meeting with our town clerks in December to give them an opportunity to talk about this process. It's a rather unique process, and there are some special rules about this, but we can't tell the town clerks when, what day, but certainly they are the ones responsible for staffing and making sure it's run properly. And so one of the factors we talked about was the cost covering for the election.
It wouldn't be the same day in all 9 towns?
It would, Bob, so it would be that's part of the consensus building. We would have to choose the same day.
Okay.
And the law says no less than 4 hours and no more than 8 hours. Why they wrote that into the statute. But I appreciate you asking the question, because I'll just add, because I learned this along the way. This particular kind of district election, the options for voters would be absentee ballot and voting in person. There's the Secretary of State's Elections Division said that there's no vote by mail or early voting options for the clerks to have to manage.
Okay. My second question is, you're going from 600 students, 700, to 8 or 9, and you haven't mentioned the septic system.
There is a wastewater treatment plant,
So you
part
have
of the plan.
Wastewater treatment plant will be there?
We would have to do that for, and Carl, you can correct me on that, but would we have to do that for the lower enroll, would we have to upgrade it anyway?
I think at 645, you could keep what you have,
670.
even though
Yeah.
the septic field itself may have to be renovated or
Right.
rebuilt. But if the enrollment stayed the same, you're just under the threshold, as I understand it.
So anything slightly above, so part of the cost you see that's baked in here, Bob, does include that.
Okay.
And unfortunately, that is not reimbursable by the MSBA.
Right, yeah, I know that, yeah. Okay, I was just curious.
Thanks,
Thank you.
thanks, Bob. Thank you. Any other questions? If not, I thank you for watching this presentation and for attending this evening, and we look forward to coming to Abington and our other communities in the near future. If viewers of this presentation have any questions, I'd encourage them to feel free to contact me at school via phone or email, and we look forward to further conversations. Thank you very much.